My name was Lala and I hated waiting. Waiting usually meant something bad had already happened. That's what I was thinking as I sat on the cold floor of the airport terminal, hugging my backpack to my chest while adults rushed past me like I wasn't even there. Wheels rolled, announcements echoed. Shoes clicked against tile. The world kept moving, even though mine felt completely stuck. That's when the police dog turned his head. It was slow, almost hesitant. And the moment it happened, something invisible but powerful shifted in the air between us. Because Police K9 South aren't supposed to react to strangers. Not while on duty. Not in a place like an airport, but this one did. His ears lowered slightly, not in fear, not in aggression, but in something closer to recognition. As if my quiet voice had reached a place no command ever had. For a moment, the noise of the terminal faded. No rolling luggage, no flight calls, no rushing footsteps. Just a little girl on the floor. And a dog who suddenly looked less like an officer and more like someone who had been waiting to be seen. Before we continue, let me ask you something quietly. Have you ever had an animal who understood you without you having to explain anything? The dog's name was Rex. He was a German shepherd, large and strong, wearing a black vest with the word police stitched across it. To everyone else, he looked serious, focused, unapproachable, but I could see something else. Rex had been sitting in that exact spot for over an hour. What no one around us knew was that his handler had been rushed to the hospital earlier that morning after a sudden medical emergency. Officers rotated, procedures continued. But Rex stayed exactly where his handler had told him to sit. Training told him to wait. Instinct told him something wasn't right. That tension lived in his body. His tail rested still on the floor, not relaxed, not alert, just waiting. I scooted a little closer, ignoring the nervous looks from nearby adults. Children notice things adults miss, and I could see it in his eyes. So I whispered, "Are you lost too?" It wasn't playful. It wasn't loud. It was careful. Like I already knew what it felt like to be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Rex didn't look away. His breathing changed first slow, steady, deep. Then he leaned forward just enough for his nose to brush the sleeve of my jacket. That small movement sent a ripple through the officers watching from a distance, because that wasn't training. That was a choice. Something unspoken passed between us in that moment. An understanding that loneliness doesn't care about age or rank. I smiled, a fragile smile, one I hadn't used in a while, and I started talking. I told him my flight was delayed. That my mom was arguing with someone at a counter, far away. That airports made me feel small, forgotten. Rex listened in the only way he knew how. He stayed. He lowered himself beside me and placed his solid body between me and the overwhelming world around us. Not touching. Just close enough to say, "You're not alone." People began to stop and watch. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. A trained police dog choosing compassion. A child choosing connection. And somewhere deep inside Rex, a decision formed, one that would soon change everything. When I rested my hand on the edge of his vest, he shifted just enough to make space. Careful, controlled, protective. That's when an officer across the terminal noticed. This wasn't a dog tolerating contact. This was a canine actively guarding someone who wasn't part of his assignment. I whispered again, barely louder than the hum of the building. "My name is Leila. I hate waiting." Because waiting usually means something bad already happened. Rex's ears twitched. Waiting was the hardest command of all. It required trust without certainty. He lifted his head and took one slow, grounding breath, steadying himself so I could feel it too. Minutes passed. Then another officer approached gently, reaching out to guide me away. Rex stood instantly. Not aggressive, not threatening. Just firm, his body said what his training allowed him to say. "This child is under my protection." The officer froze. At that exact moment, a radio crackled. "The handler is stable, conscious, asking for his dog." When Rex heard his handler's name spoken aloud, his entire posture changed. Relief washed through him so clearly that even I noticed. I smiled wide and said, "See, you weren't lost. You were just waiting for your person." His tail moved slowly across the floor. When my mom finally returned, fear etched deep into her face. She stopped short at the sight. Her daughter kneeling beside a police dog, calm, safe, smiling. She had expected chaos. Instead, she found peace. The officers allowed a few more moments. Some things mattered more than schedules. I hugged Rex carefully around the neck and whispered, "Thank you," like it was a secret just for him. He lowered his head close to mine, a silent promise that even in loud, crowded places, no one has to wait alone. When we finally separated, Rex returned to his post sharper, now calmer, renewed. I walked away holding my mother's hand, turning back one last time to wave. Rex sat tall and watched until I disappeared into the crowd. Because sometimes the strongest bonds are the shortest. And sometimes loyalty, patience, and heart matter more than any command ever could.